Okay, here we go. It's the first episode. Non-essential fountains.
Welcome.
Lyndon and Emily doing the podcast thing.
Yeah.
First episode.
First episode of Non-Essential Fountains, titled The Importance of Being Slow and Earnest.
So, I like the way you tell the story about how we thought to do this. So, you tell it.
Well, we went to see Super Mario Brothers in April, and we saw a trailer for the new Fast X film that just came out. And we both looked at each other, and I kind of gestured at the screen like, oh, they're still making Fast and the Furious films.
Yeah.
And we watched the trailer, and like, I'm into like car stuff, you know, casually. You're kind of into racing games as well.
A little bit.
And we both looked at each other like, all right.
Yeah.
We both want to see this.
Well, I remember like you said you go I want to watch that and just shut my fucking brain off.
Absolutely.
Like,
yes.
and that's what something like that is for. So I was like, oh hell yeah. And then I said, and we're having this conversation in the theater, by the way.
Yeah, while the trailers are playing,
where the
it's
people
dark.
talking, and I said, you know, I haven't seen any of those other than the very first one and the second one, which is a weird one too. Like it falls into a weird timeline or different spot in the timeline, so that's going to be confusing.
Right, and the only one that comes to mind for me is Tokyo Drift.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Which,
yeah,
that's the third one, and that came out like
it's the
2000.
second one.
Oh, because there's Fast and Furious 2, and then there's Tokyo Drift. That's the third one.
No, that's Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift is technically the second one made, the second one released.
Are you sure?
Yeah, Too Fast, Too Furious came out later.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I had that backwards.
Yeah.
Because I thought one was 2003.
If
one was 2006.
I mean, did we never look up like the actual order? Is that
Okay,
the one thing we didn't do?
Well,
you look it up and
I have the Wikipedia page open.
So, anyways, so the idea was we're gonna watch all of the Fast and Furious movies, and figure them out, right? I mean, like, you said you're into car stuff, and you're Italian, so that's that kind of.
Does
like,
that matter?
Yeah.
Oh
It
yeah.
does.
Dom,
Well, there's the part later on where the guy is in the Ferrari and like they're like smoke him, and you're like, fuck yeah, like I expected you to root for the Ferrari, but you're like, yeah. But so and then my other thought was I hadn't seen. What is it?
I told you.
What it's too.
See, Too Fast, Too Furious.
I don't even believe this.
No,
Okay. All right.
I was right. Tokyo Drift's
So
the
maybe
third
I'm
one.
wrong. So this is where we're at. This is where we're at in the process already because I have only seen you hadn't seen the first one. Had you seen the first one?
Like as like a teenager.
Okay, so we'd both only seen the first one once.
Like, in
You didn't seem to
passing.
remember any of it.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I was probably at a friend's house over like sleepover,
Yeah.
renting tapes for the night. Like that's
There were so many
that's probably what it
VHSs
was. Yeah.
Still of this. I watched it and I was really excited because as a kid I was into like racing stuff. Like we watched a lot of motorsports, you know, NASCAR, monster trucks. I liked car stuff. We didn't really watch sports. So like I remember being like 10 and we used to get Entertainment Weekly or something, one of the magazines, and I don't know who the hell had a subscription to that in my house. But I remember seeing an article. That's how I found out about this movie was coming out. It's like it was an article about this movie coming out about drag racing. And that was like, holy shit, that's the coolest thing, you know? That was the coolest thing that could have been coming out. Because new Star Wars had come out, and that already sucked. So it was like, well, here's this cool movie about drag racing. I was really excited. And I did not see this in theaters, though.
I didn't either.
Like, I was always, like, me and my dad would go to the movies all the time, and we did not see this in theaters. I saw Gone in 60 Seconds, the Nicolas Cage one, in theaters, which I was also all about, but not this. And I remember, I think I rented it. And I was like, I was okay with it, but I don't remember freaking out about it as a kid. either, because we'll get into that. Because I was like majorly disappointed about this when I was a
Right.
little kid, a child. When I was 11, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, so safe to say we're more or less viewing the first film for the first time in 2023.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's a period piece.
it is. And yeah, you heard it here, folks. The Fast and the Furious film is a period piece.
I will say it again. It is, though.
Okay.
It is so 2001. So, anyways, instead of blabbing, you have a bunch of notes, and I have a tiny little notebook.
I did want to start off here with a couple notes about the film to set some context here. So
I forgot about this already. Go ahead.
the first Fast and the Furious film, or titled The Fast and the Furious. So it was released in theaters June 22nd, 2001. So it's coming up on his 22nd birthday soon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just as ignorant and stupid as a 22-year-old.
It was directed by Rob Cohen. Several writers on this: Gary Scott Thompson, Eric Bergquist, David Ayer.
Eric Breakfast?
Bergquist. Oh my God. Bergquist. Okay. Starring Paul Walker, Vin Diesel, Michelle Rodriguez, etc., and that guy that played Buffalo Bill
Yeah,
in Silence
Ted
of the
Levine.
Lambs.
Ted Levine.
Thank you. That's all I had in my notes.
He was
the guy
also
that was
in
Buffalo Bill.
I remember him even better as the dad in the Hills Have Eyes remake who gets burned alive, and that scarred me as like a 16-year-old.
Right.
But yeah, he's probably the most decorated actor in the movie. There's not really any other like big names.
Not
in
yet.
this.
Not in 2001.
Not in 2001,
Not at
no.
this point.
No.
Interesting thing about this film is it was based on an article from Vibe magazine that was published in 1998. The article was titled Racer X by Ken Lee. Originally, the film was going to be titled Racer X, but Rob Cohen decided to go with The Fast and the Furious, which was originally a 1954 film starring John Ireland and directed by Roger Corman.
Roger Corman.
So there is an even older
yeah,
Fast and the Furious
which is
film.
I had no idea, and they literally just took the name and were like, we're making it.
There were
different.
car chases
Well, sure,
and stuff.
I'm sure there were, and
Plots unrelated.
you could take
however.
that title and you could put it on any movie about cars, except for like if it's old people driving. You probably couldn't do that.
Correct. Premise of the film: Paul Walker stars an undercover cop and he's looking to infiltrate LA's racing gangs. Initially, the film had mixed reviews from audiences and critics, criticism for the story, and praise for a lot of the action. It grossed over $207 million in theaters with a budget of $38 million, which is a lot in 2001.
38 million. They only cost them 38 million
Correct.
to do this.
Yes,
That's pretty fucking wild.
I agree.
Holy shit.
Yep.
38 million. I mean, yeah, differences in inflation and whatnot, but like,
Well, also consider everything else, because this is a Universal picture.
Yeah.
They had put out Jurassic Park
yeah.
and other super high-grossing films with ridiculous budgets. So yeah, 38 million seems like chump change.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot for, I mean, a movie like this now. I mean, did you look up what like it costs to make like the newest one?
Absolutely
budget
not.
for
I didn't want to
Fast X?
spoil it. You can.
I'm gonna look it up just to see the difference, because I'm gonna guess. What do you think? I'm gonna guess Fast X is like at least a $300 million movie.
Oh, that seems steep.
Really?
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't really have much context for how movies are made.
340 million.
Okay, well, you win.
Holy shit. I expected to be wrong. But 340 million versus 38 million. Go ahead. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, other fun notes I have here is what else was out at the time that this film was released.
Mm-hmm.
So, on June 22nd, 2001, also playing in theaters was Dr. Dolittle 2, Lara Croft Tomb Raider, and Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Holy shit. Okay.
Just to
So really, this movie's biggest competition was Tomb Raider,
basically.
which probably lost to this in the box office. I would bet.
I did not look that up.
It's okay.
While it only had 58 out of 100 on Metacritic and 5.4 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes, or 55%, it was nominated for several awards, including Teen Choice Award. It won the Taurus Award. So a lot of accolades for best driving, best stuntman and stuntwoman, best work with a vehicle. So I commend that.
Yeah, it won
A lot
stuff.
of good driving was in it.
I mean, if you want to watch a movie about driving, I mean, this is a good place to start.
I agree.
I would argue that. I mean, I guess we'll just get into it because my complaints about the movie are spread across this mishmash of just so many things that happen. The movie can't decide what it wants to do.
Right. Also, bear in mind, this movie is 1 hour and 46 minutes of runtime.
It's perfect.
It
I think
was.
it's perfect.
It was. It
Honestly,
moved at a good clip.
It doesn't. There's maybe a couple of times where I feel like it's kind of, taking a poop in its diaper and just kind of sitting there and not doing anything. But for the most part, it moves. The things that happen are kind of like, why,
Why?
It's like, I don't know why I don't understand all this Johnny Tran bullshit. There's just this fucking pointless. Anyways, so let's just start because, we open.
We're at a shipping.
Hold on, yeah, the title screen. I want to start right away with the title screen
just the title.
because you mentioned it. You mentioned it right before we start because you said you didn't even think to write down like the chrome
background or like
the
chrome logo.
the font.
Yeah. So the title itself, The Fast and the Furious, it was like chrome bubble letters, reflective.
It's not totally. It looks like
it looked like 2000.
What's the word for like the name on a car, like the letters?
Just the emblem.
Like an emblem. It looks like a
Right.
shiny car.
I
emblem.
didn't consider that.
But what I find is weird about it. I found weird about it this time watching it after not having seen the movie in 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
The title screen is like there and right away, and like within like 10 seconds. There's not like sweeping opening credits like like a movie now, like a Marvel movie starts.
Well, there's no other like splash scenes of so many
just
logos
nothing. Yeah,
either.
and this was like when around the time this movie came out, you had a lot of like opening credits scenes that were kind of like if you watch like Spider-Man, like the Spider-Man movie, like the
Right.
first one, it's always like this, here's these close-ups of kind of things like the Tim Burton credits, I think you could call it. Like it's just kind of slow panning over like a desk with there would be like, Gone in 60 Seconds did the same thing, but it's not. This movie just goes fast, furious. There's the title, and then we start.
And then we're at a port or some kind of shipping port with tons of storage containers.
Yeah.
So did you want to tell us what was inside these storage containers?
Oh, it's 2001, so there's so many like DVD players. And like, did you see like little
Panasonic?
Oh, this is hardcore product placement. Like Panasonic paid for a chunk of this movie, but like DVD players, and these are like 2001 DVD players.
There were TV and
Yeah.
VCR combos,
Little
like those 10-inch TVs with the.
Like a garage TV, basically.
We had handheld digital cameras.
Did they have those too?
Yeah, like the mini camcorders.
It's all
Not like a
Panasonic.
digital camera, like the ones you
They're like-
strap to your hand.
Yeah, they're like handy cams, right? Is that the
one.
word for it?
Right.
And they still had to put a thing into it.
Correct.
To like record on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. Like 4 years later, and it would have been like razors, like phones,
Yeah.
like flip phones or
phones,
something.
yeah.
But I guess in 2001, everybody was like, what would it be today? Like if it was like you just replaced the product, be like VR headsets or something.
Oh.
Like
that's
they're
a good
stealing
question.
VR or probably iPhones.
Probably like chips. Like just computer chips in
Yeah,
general.
I'm just thinking like a general product.
A PS5.
There
I
you
don't
go.
know.
Oh, that's
Do
it.
kids like
PS5s.
PS5 still?
And
It's
the
been a-
fucking Vin Diesel's like, these aren't going out of the market for 6 months. We got them, and he's like handing them out to like the kids.
Oh, by chips, I should specify. I meant like computer, like RAM chips. Not
Oh,
just,
yeah,
like,
no, I thought you were-
potato chips.
I thought you were talking about.
Well,
Rap
the first thing I
snacks.
thought of was the shortage during COVID. So And
Yeah.
how, like,
No,
you
no,
can't make
that
phones
makes
and
sense.
stuff, so-
That makes sense. Oh, chips, like as in like Cheez-Its would be
Absolutely,
really
yeah.
funny. I guess those are more like crackers. So anyways, so there's like it's not a cold open totally, but you just see like these unmarked little like ricers. Or,
Right.
I don't know what kind were they.
I
What
think
were they? Civics? Honda Civics?
Those were all Honda Civics with the green
the
LEDs.
underglow.
Yeah,
the
so
green
they're
underglow.
all overhauled these 1999 2000 Honda Civics with green LEDs
Yeah.
underneath. Like
That makes them
giant
fast.
spoilers on the back.
Wouldn't you want? I mean, they're black and they have like tinted windows, but wouldn't you want it to be less conspicuous? Like less conspicuous,
No, you
rather than
gotta-
have like matching, like underglow. Like right away, people are gonna be like, "Oh yeah, it's like
It's them.
it's them. That's us. These cars that drive around."
Well, they
together
don't
all
get
the time."
caught. That's the thing.
No.
So we should specify. So this cuts from this whole shipping port area, and these 3 Honda Civics with the green LEDs in the undercarriage are cornering a trucker who has one of the shipping containers and is transporting it. And it's the same shipping container that had all the DVD players, TVs, etc. in it. And this is what Vin Diesel, or the character Dom.
Well, we don't
Toretto-
know that yet.
We don't know
We don't
that
know who
yet.
it doesn't show who it is
But
because it's
we know.
Well, I mean, it's the movie doesn't do so later on, yeah, because later on it's revealed kind of sort of in like the laziest way that like Vin Diesel and his crew are the ones doing that. But like I remember being like a kid and watching this and just being like, oh well, it's Vin Diesel, right? Like,
Right.
but it's also not clear. I mean, we'll get to that too. So they're ripping off these trucks from DVD players and handycams and
Just
stuff.
harassing these poor
And
truckers.
then you don't see who does it, and then it cuts. Where does it go from there? It goes to Paul Walker, like he's like practicing driving. Is that where it jumps
my
to?
notes skip to Mad Max yellow filter. We're in the desert. Less than 2 minutes in.
Yeah.
Car under truck stunt. Yeah, it's one of the Civics does that.
Yeah,
And then it cuts to the Butthole Surfers-esque soundtrack.
yeah. That's Paul Walker's.
Because I think that's when he goes into the shop.
Well, so it just goes to Paul Walker, and he's like in this green car that looks like a cup from Taco Bell. And was like
It
I
does.
wrote.
That's his. That was a Mitsubishi.
Is that
right?
what it is?
think
I
so.
wrote down. What.
No, that's a.
What was I?
We also, I should note, we have the movie playing on
Yeah,
silent
we put it
right
on
behind
just
here.
like.
And I'm
after
watching
we
his
watched it.
Mitsubishi right now. It's definitely a Mitsubishi.
Yeah, so like, I wrote his car looked like a fast food cup. Yeah, so it's like, he's just driving around in this lot, and he's practicing driving, I guess, but he's just going fast in a straight line, and it just shows him like spin out. And he's like, damn it!
Well, the point
Whoa.
of that. So listen, the point of that, and we'll lay out some of the characters here. So Vin Diesel's character is Dom Toretto. Toretto, my bad, Toretto. And he is the leader of this gang that's trying to like steal all these products.
They're
and
not a
like,
gang, they're a
smuggling.
team.
They're a team.
They're
Sorry,
a
they're a
team.
family.
It's all about family.
Paul Walker is the undercover cop whose name is Brian O'Connor. And I assume he's probably racing at the beginning like that to practice racing.
Yeah,
I
he's-
guess.
it's-
And he's like
it's
he's probably
implying that
thinking
he's-
to himself, "Oh, how am I gonna fit in with the
Which
gang?"
is
unless
again,
I
it's
look
weird
cool?"
because it would make more sense if you know he's a cop right away, but they don't tell you until like 45 minutes into the movie, maybe 20, maybe sooner than that. But like otherwise, it's just like he's just dorking around in this fucking parking lot, spinning out, and he's like mad about it.
Right.
Like this is weird.
And my next notes just state sounded like 1998. A lot
Oh.
of record scratches and forced attitude,
Yes.
hip hop and drum and bass.
No, I remember you said everything is orange because that goes to the part that goes to Paul Walker going into that shop and he's like harassing the girl at the front counter.
Oh, right. So
Like-
he goes into. So we move from Brian.
We don't have to go like every single scene of the movie either. Just
Correct. Well, he's putzing around.
yeah.
And another character is introduced to us, Mia, who is Dom, Vin Diesel's sister, another very important character here. And she is going to be the female love interest of Brian.
Yeah,
throughout the
I mean,
film.
you can tell right away.
Right.
Like, they don't even,
They
gloss
don't-
over that's
yeah.
going to happen.
Yep, and then a fight breaks out between Brian and Vince. Vince is basically, I kept calling him Vin Diesel's boyfriend. He was just so attached to him as, like,
Yeah.
his right... So
Well,
Vince is Dom's right-hand man.
He also... but
sidekick.
He also wants to, he wants to fuck, Vin Diesel's sister.
Something like
He wants
that.
to bang her, and he's mad that, her and Paul Walker obviously, have kind of, oogly eyes at each other.
I see. It implied at the house party, which we'll get to the house party too,
I love
that
the
they
house
were
party.
already together, and because she says something to Brian like, "Oh, I wish you could get in a fight with my boyfriend. I'd like to see that." Or
No.
some offhand.
No, she's saying that about Vin Diesel.
Oh,
Because she was...
I could barely hear what anybody.
Because he
was
asked
saying.
her out. He goes, "We should go out sometime." She's like, "I don't date my brother's friends." Even though she's being you think this is where they're going to, kiss? I remember thinking they're going to... It's do they make out in the kitchen? Because they're, washing dishes together. And,
we'll set to save the house party scene. So
it's just but he asked, and she goes, "You have to beat up my brother. Or you'd have to go through my brother," and he's like, "Oh, beat him up." She's like, "I'll pay to see that." And that stuff. So
okay.
it's all really.
I couldn't tell
because
because the audio mixing was
It's
awful.
so
in this
quiet.
movie. It's
Everybody
very quiet.
whispers.
Everybody whispers.
They're so furious that they whisper.
And the music's at 3,000 decibels.
Yeah. No, going to the house party because I love. This is another thing I want to talk about because this movie is filled with random scenes of a lot of people in a room, and you'll just see people in a corner making out.
Oh, there's just babes.
That's just what they do. Babes
Here
everywhere.
come the babes, the beer.
Babes, beer, and boobs.
Yep.
Oh,
place.
because that's what
And
happens
car
when you
racing.
race.
I also noted low-rise jeans, halter tops,
Yeah.
and pencil-thin eyebrows. Set the scene a little bit for 2001.
Either pencil-thin eyebrows or dark, masculine, huge eyebrows
Right.
Mia. I can't not look at her eyebrows. It's just her face is mostly eyebrows.
I feel makeup was done very differently in 2000.
I don't know. I don't know what was done here.
Everyone was very heavily made up, and you could tell.
No. I don't know
guess.
makeup.
I do. I mean, that everyone looked very caked on, including Mia, and it did not bring out her best side.
I mean, it makes sense because this movie is not shot in HD. It's not HD didn't exist. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of you're getting that standard definition.
Go look at all the spray tan
bullshit
right now.
coming out. Yeah, see, I used to just get all the the tan-skinned women in this movie mixed up because her and the other and Dom's girlfriend look like the same person
they look
almost.
very alike, correct?
And all the guys look the same. Paul Walker and Vin Diesel, the only two guys that don't look like each other. All the white guys look like each other. All the Asian guys look like each other. It's they just didn't. I don't know. It's weird. It's confusing. And how many characters are in this?
Yeah, there are a lot of characters. We haven't introduced the Road Rash gang yet.
Yeah. That's damn.
That's Tran and Lance, the leaders of the Road Rash gang.
Johnny Tran.
Johnny Tran.
Which it's not really clear what they do. What their bag is. They're just a gang with guns. All their guns have silencers. And they race. But they're supposed to be criminals, or are they just a heavy-handed race gang? Is that what it is? They're just rich Asian dudes.
I'm not sure. It didn't really specify on
No.
the Wikipedia page too, because
No.
I did gloss over it a little bit. And
'Cause-
I'm guessing that Johnny Tran, who was arrested later in the film,
Yeah.
his father probably has something to do with all those shipping containers we saw at the beginning. Maybe
Oh.
he works with something from shipping from East Asia, and his son Johnny Tran might have been doing smuggling, and because his father was upset when he got arrested
and they
and slapped him.
Yeah, so he had reason to suspect he had done something.
Because they were a very wealthy family, obviously, and
Right.
that deal with trading.
And they
somehow.
didn't they find boxes of DVD players and stuff when they're snooping around in his garage or something
Yes.
before they witness him
Yeah.
shooting oil into that guy's mouth?
Yeah.
Like it's just weird. It's just weird.
I know it sounds like we're going
But-
all over the place.
well, it's
but
gonna
this
happen.
is about how the film goes.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. You can't go totally in order. But
So
like,
we have Johnny Tran and his gang, which I have dubbed the Road Rash gang, since they're always on these like little
they're on
Suzuki.
crotch
and
rockets. They race
Honda.
cars, but they
Yeah.
take bikes around.
Yeah,
town.
they take bikes around.
Yeah.
We have Hector and his contingency.
Oh yeah, so these are
The
like the
Honda-
secondary gangs that
Which they don't show up too
No.
much. I thought Hector would have more of like a.
they kind of introduce Hector. You're thinking he's going to be a bigger
Yeah.
character, and I'm pretty sure he's been in other movies around the same time where he plays the exact same guy.
Right.
Like, but he doesn't do anything at some point. They give you these other gangs to make you. I think they're supposed to be kind of red herrings. Like, Paul Walker is here investigating. The FBI is involved in people stealing DVD players.
No, that checks out because the scene where Hector purchases.
Right.
So I should specify, Brian is undercover. He's working in this car parts shop, like this super high end. Like he sells, and you're just gonna see NOS everywhere.
Yeah, it's just
all
tanks
over
of NOS.
everything.
That's all anybody buys at the store.
So Hector comes into the shop where Brian is working and says, "I need 3 of each for Honda Civics." And Brian has been trying to tail 3 Honda Civics that have been harassing truckers. So I think Brian believed that like Hector was doing that, but it wasn't Hector. It was Dom's
that's
group.
another thing they kind of bring up. But then, like in one of the cop arguments, he's like, "It's not Hector. The tires didn't match or something." So like he
Right.
goes through this whole thing where he thinks it's Hector, and then in one line he just goes, "No, it's not them."
Oh, we should talk about the first race.
That's what I was going to go to because Babes was at the top of that page because.
So before we dive into the first race, so we kind of set the scene and set all the characters. We have Road Rash Gang. We have Dom and his family. Family's going to be a big deal. We have Brian, undercover cop. And then we have Hector and his contingency, which is kind of a red herring. So now we're going to move on into the first race, in which Brian enters, and he is trying to act like a hard ass.
Yeah. Oh, by pulling up and getting out and standing next to his car and looking around like a dork.
Yeah,
like
he does.
a nerd.
I did note that he does not know what to do with his arms.
He doesn't know what to do with his arms with his button-up shirt over his white T-shirt.
Yeah.
The 2001 fashion.
Yep.
But he like just kind of pulls up and he just gets out, stands there, and then like Hector walks up to him and he's like, "What do you got under there?" And blah blah blah. And they do all this car jargon, which I love. All the meeting people standing around in a circle going, "Oh, that's 2JZ, blah 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 blah." And like I don't know anything about cars, but it's like I wonder half of it, if most of it's like nonsense, anyways.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But the first race, and there's like 1,000 people there.
Yeah,
right?
Just in the middle of LA. Like,
In the middle,
nobody's gonna
like
notice.
No, it's like it looks like they're tucked between the buildings of this old power station or something, but that's not where they're gonna race because they end up moving for one race. There's all these people there, and Dom shows up, and there's this thing between him and Paul Walker, and they basically set up this race, and then they all move. Everybody's like, "Everybody, we're going with the blah." And they go to this. They drive like blocks away.
Right.
All these people to go do this illegal race, and which I assume some form of this happens in real life, but all for one race. Like the amount of people there, the amount of babes there.
Yeah, there was a lot of babes.
Just
and a
babes
lot of
getting out of
autocross.
cars.
I did note about one of the babes that I wrote it in all caps. I smell skanks.
Dude.
And it's
Michelle Rodriguez though, one of the.
Was that Michelle Rodriguez?
Yeah,
Okay.
that was her that said
Okay.
that. Like one of her like 10 lines in the whole movie. Like I always feel like she says more, but
You know,
her and Dom's relationship is not like well defined.
I wish I would have seen more of her character. She was a kind of a badass.
She's
at
cool.
the end.
I actually like her in movies. Even if it's a bad movie, she's usually pretty cool. But she's kind of the same in every movie.
Well, even
too.
in just this film, I feel like she did not get enough screen time.
She does
for
later.
all the-
From what I can tell, she's in a lot more of the other movies.
Well, that
beyond
makes sense. I
Tokyo
haven't
Drift.
seen
Yeah.
any of them yet.
Well, she's from what I can tell, a lot of these characters we see in this one don't repeat throughout the franchise. Like it's like Michelle Rodriguez and Vin Diesel And like I don't even think Mia. I think she might like be retconned later on or something.
The Skyline Child come back.
I don't
want
think so.
Skyline
Well,
Child.
he gets shot and nobody even says what happens
Oh,
to him.
we should talk about Skyline Child. So Jesse.
Yeah, which I didn't
he-
see who he's played by, but he's actually kind of somebody.
He
too.
works on all of Dom's cars, and he is this savant with engines, like very intelligent.
Yeah.
Brian mentions offhand when Skyline Child / Jesse is showing him this computer monitor of all these car parts, like just very 90s
computery, like boop, boop, boop,
like
boop.
matrices going on. There's a lot going on, and Brian says, "Why don't you go to MIT? Why don't you go to school?" And Jesse says something like, "I have that that attention that," and Brian says, "Oh, you have ADD." So
Back when it was just ADD.
back when it was just ADD and it was not ADHD yet. But I really liked Skyline Child.
I mean,
as a character. I'm going to keep calling him Skyline Child because he drives a Skyline.
Man,
and
he's-
I did not know his name was Jesse until he got shot.
Ben
I
and
just want to specify.
Oh, actually, just like a lot of TV. There's something else. The only other thing he was in that I remember is October Sky. He was in October Sky.
Cool.
He was one of the kids. But yeah, the ADD thing was funny, and he's like, "Man, it's just something about engines." As he's smoking, it's like engines calm me down, and he's like bathing in cigarette smoke.
Yeah, so Jesse is not the greatest driver, but he's an excellent mechanic.
He's
the mechanic. So he just knows what to do.
So, anyways, we're at the first race, and they go and they have this race, and
talk
and-
about the guy that had a PS1.
oh
in
yeah, well
his-
that's like
his-
they're going
in
through
his
like
frickin' car.
they're going through like all the racers, and it's like Ja Rule is one of them, and there's like this random Asian guy, and it goes through like what they're doing in their cars before the race, and the one guy's just got like a PS1. Or it just shows a PlayStation controller. He's playing like Gran Turismo 2 or something.
It had to have been.
It was a
at the time it was
sim.
filmed.
It was definitely a racing sim of some
It-
sort. But I don't
Well,
remember what.
it had to have been Gran Turismo 2 because Gran Turismo 3 did not look
Yeah,
as
it-
blocky.
yeah,
it
it
was
was-
definitely a PS1 with a PS1 analog.
I was seeing
controller.
Jaggies.
Yeah.
I was seeing Jaggies.
Yeah,
for sure.
seeing a lot of polygons.
A lot of polygons.
So I should specify. So the cars are filled with 2001 technology, and I'll leave that up to your imaginations. Just everybody has like laptops, chunky laptops.
yeah, big laptops. I love
lot of
Paul
buttons.
Walker's laptop that yells at him when his car starts to fall apart during the
Yeah,
race.
All the pistons just
And
explode.
yeah, everything explodes in his car, and he goes, "Shut up!" and like closes
Slams
his
the
laptop
laptop.
because that's gonna do it.
So Dom wins this race. Brian, Paul Walker's character, almost wins, but he just destroys his car by going too fast. And I
Well,
kept calling it nitrous, like his
like-
nitrous, bro.
Yeah,
His
uh,
nitrous.
Vin Diesel is like harping on him. He's like, "You're not double clutching like you're supposed to." Which I don't know if any that is anything or makes any sense in real life at all. I don't know enough about drag racing to
I don't know
to
anything
comment.
about drag racing.
But like yeah, his car basically fucking falls apart, and it's like sitting there smoking, and it's like, yeah, you lost, and blah blah blah, and then like the cops show up, and I guess like 100 cops show up to try and arrest everybody. That's like all the people, by the way, followed them to the finish line too. Somehow got there, like
Not
during
important.
this race.
Moving
No.
on. So the cops show up in these ancient Crown Vics, which was kind of cool to see old cop cars too.
Yeah, like blocky cop cars. I wish like the cops had like the old cop hats
Right.
too. They're just like old timey, like. "Meow."
So I did note that the OST at this part sounds like shoving straw repeatedly through fast food cup lid.
Yeah,
So it had that like
it's
that very hollow wow.
It's
I can't just
well,
shove a straw in a cup lid. That's what the
I said it's like
soundtrack
it's like
sounds
proto dubstep kind of, and then you saw who you mentioned who did the score, and it's not somebody.
BT. So BT kind of on line with DJ Tiesto, a couple of, like Paul Van Dyke, that era of trance. BT's still around today, and so is Tiesto, but they did more old house music and inspired
Because
a
like,
lot of house and
because it was
industrial
weird.
artists.
Because we were talking about the music in the movie and how like there really isn't any. There's not like a cinematic score. It's like that stuff. It's like EDM kind of, and then like licensed music.
It
Just like
started
random.
very, very hip hop, very rock, alt, Limp Bizkit, and then it went into a lot of trance.
Yeah. Yeah, so they just filled all the
hip
empty
hop
stuff.
just fell off
Yeah, they did-
completely, and it was
yeah.
all trance and EDM.
Like new metal, and there's like a I can't remember the band. Well, there's definitely Limp Bizkit, and then there's Saliva, and I
That's
super
right.
freaked out. I was like, hell yeah, Saliva. But like, this is where. So I'm thinking, where do you go from here? Because there's this thing, and then through this cop chase, Paul Walker and Vin Diesel become kind of friends, and it's just kind of weird.
Well, he saves them.
Yeah,
Well,
he
he's on foot, and
picks him
Brian
up.
sees him. And,
Yeah.
remember, Brian's still a cop, and he picks up Dom to earn his trust, is what's happening
yeah.
here.
This is just like, I don't know. Then they go to the house party, and that was the house party actually.
Well, no, before the house party, the Road Rash gang find them, corner them, make them go to the Road Rash gang restaurant.
You're right.
And that is the exposition for the Road Rash gang that were there against Dom's crew somehow.
Well, so it's
I didn't take
literally-
a lot of notes there. There was an explosion.
he mentions. He's like, I thought I told you not to come around my block anymore or something. And for that, they shoot his car up.
Well, that's the first explosion.
Yeah, first explosion of the movie. And the only one. It's the only explosion in the
Is it?
movie. Yeah. Which
Guess
I was
you're right.
surprised by. This movie has one explosion. We're going to have to count the number of explosions as they go. But, like, then through that, it's just his car blows up. And then Vin Diesel's like, it's because I slept with his sister or something. And that's
I
the
didn't
whole
catch
thing.
that. I didn't catch why.
That's
they
the whole
were
reason
pissed
Johnny
off.
Tran doesn't like him, which, whatever. Who cares? Because it doesn't matter. Because, like, Johnny Tran and, like, Hector's gangs are just, they don't need to be there. They just don't need to be.
They really don't.
Like, at all. But, and then there's car building.
Did you want to talk any more about the house party? Before we move
No, I think we hit the house party.
Yeah, it's
pretty
just
well, 'cause
babes, beer, and 30-year-olds trying to play 21.
There was like the one really weird part because the house party actually just
It
got
just
done
ended, yeah.
playing as we're sitting here, but like there's a one really weird part where it's like Vince and like Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez, and they're kind of like all talking at the same time, like blah blah blah, blah. And then like Vin Diesel just like carries her upstairs or something. It's a conversation that makes no sense whatsoever. There's no dialogue. And that's kind of how that ends. And what happens after that? I don't even.
Brian gets arrested, quote unquote, and this is
Oh,
when
they
Buffalo
reveal.
Bill comes
Yeah.
in. Who
This
the
is-
character who we are calling Buffalo Bill is Brian's boss, I assume, at
Yeah,
the police station.
Well, so this is like, I think this is like a joint thing between like, it's supposed to be like the LAPD is teaming up with the FBI, but they don't like
so
each
Buffalo
other.
Bill's FBI.
No, Buffalo Bill is head LAPD guy, and Black Cop is FBI guy.
Oh,
He's the one that's why he's always like fighting with Paul Walker. He's like, "You're
Okay.
not doing it the good way," and Paul Walker's like, "I'm gonna do it the good way."
Yeah, I didn't catch the other guy's FBI at all.
Yeah. So
I don't think he was even introduced as FBI unless it was just in a
no, I
passing
think
comment.
you just, if I remember right, they just kind of let you assume because for some reason the LAPD and the FBI are holed up in this like mansion
right.
up in like the hills for some
And
reason.
there's just bankers' boxes of just like papers all around them,
Files, it's
thousands
files.
and thousands of.
And-
Why do you have? Who brought somebody brought these like hundreds
Yeah.
of like heavy ass boxes
Yeah,
filled
the
with
handles
like
in 'em.
sensitive documents into like this huge house
Yeah,
in
and
LA.
computers. There's
And
like
computers.
old CRT like monitors and shit, but there's not anybody at them. There's just everybody's just at lunch every time there's.
So
like, a
they are
meeting.
in an actual residential house that they have kind of set up as an office and like sequestered like
Which
office
I don't-
spaces,
why?
which is odd.
Why? Why did they do that?
As a cover? Is that something people do?
This is such such a super secret operation. The cops
had to get a house in
like
LA.
they have to be undercover as they do like filing and like clerical work,
right?
And eat lunch.
Because this place had a pool. Like, I want to be very clear. There was no way that this was an official office building of any kind. It was like a house.
I mean, like in terms of like actual like LA, you could assume it was a house that would normally get rented for like porn shoots and stuff.
That's
like
what
that.
It looked like. Yeah.
But why are the cops? Why is the LAPD and the FBI? Why are they staying? Why are they hanging out in this house? Like, this is the most important case they have going on, that they gotta like have this Airbnb.
Beats me. But anyway, so they're in this house and Brian is unloading some info on them that he learned about Dom and the Road Rash gang and the Hector contingency and like Vince and this and that.
They have so many of these conversations in this house and nothing is ever solved.
Well, it's just to move the plot forward. So basically this house is there to serve as, every time Brian goes back, he summarizes what we just saw, as you noticed. Because throughout the whole thing, there's never... And we've actually asked this back and forth. When did they say that?
Yeah.
When was that shown?
Yeah.
Oh, we just have to assume that happens. So because we have to assume so much, we have these scenes where Brian has to go back to FBI Man and Buffalo Bill to recap everything.
Yeah,
and this is a constant throughout this entire
I would think of those characters are kind of like the audience surrogate. It's Paul Walker coming to the audience and being like, this is just in case you've missed what kind of bullshit's been going on. Here's what's happening.
In case you were looking at the lights and the pretty colors in the cars.
In case you think Vin Diesel is the guy I'm supposed to bust, he's not. I promise, he's not. And then he is. Like,
right.
Which is where you learn that in one of those house talks, and it's the most important piece of information that happens in any of those scenes.
Yeah. So moving on from the house and Buffalo Bill, we are back. We did talk about the car scene, the overnight parts from Japan part.
Oh, I knew that was going to come up because they're looking at Paul Walker's looking at the computer stuff with Nerd Guy with
Skyline
Child and he's going, yeah, we could blah blah blah, we could get this, or we could just overnight it from Japan. Like, what?
Yeah, this is the conversation we have with Jesse, Skyline Child, that introduces him and his.
What are you gonna How can you overnight anything from Japan? Like,
well, this is where we learn Jesse's a savant with engines. So moving on.
And it doesn't really come into use later on. That's just
shot.
Just his role. Yes, he does, and it's hilarious.
He gets shot, and he's not a great racer.
Oh, so. Before we move on, I forgot to mention, all of the cops in the house are all drinking fancy, frothy cappuccinos for no reason.
I thought that was... I found that very intentional, because I thought it was supposed to give off this image that these cops are not hard people. And you'll also notice that they're conducting all this business oftentimes outside in broad daylight.
Yeah.
Whereas everything else in the movie happens at nighttime.
Yeah.
Or there's a heavy filter over everything. They didn't put the Mad Max filter over anything that was happening in the cop scene.
You're right. They make this look like the whole movie takes place in a desert, which, I mean, I just say LA is like right next to desert.
Correct.
It's all brown at some points, but then like this part where we're in, like in the fucking dark garage, and like the color grading is not the same. It's
right.
Just like,
but especially with the cop scene, there's no. Oh, I guess filter's the only way to put it, compared to when we're seeing Dom and Vince interact.
Yeah.
It looks a little more edgy.
It does kind of.
I don't know how intentional that might have been, or if they were just super lazy about filming these cop scenes, since they just serve as exposition and moving the plot forward.
Maybe. I would assume...
I'm reading it. It's a Fast and the Furious. I'm reading way
You're
too
probably
much.
reading too deep into it. It's probably just inconsistent. Like...
Or there's one or two people who are like, wow, yeah.
That looks really good. Okay, so there was I thought it was funny how, so we were kind of in the montage where they're building, like Paul Walker is helping rebuild this other car
We're getting ready for Race Wars.
Yeah, Race Wars.
That's the big end of the movie thing.
Such an awful, awful name for an event that happens in Los Angeles. But they're building this car because Paul Walker owes Vin Diesel a car, and they're doing this montage, and it's like, was that like Saliva is playing, and they're building this thing, and they're driving. There's that part where they're driving back from the parts store, and they have this huge pile of parts on like the back of like Paul Walker's work truck.
Oh yeah.
And they're driving around him like in formation. Like they drive around town with like the truck in the middle and all the cars like around him for some reason.
And Vince, who is Dom's right-hand man, is very jealous of Brian right now.
Yeah.
Very jealous.
Fishnets. He's always got that fishnet shirt.
That 2001
on.
fishnet Hot Topic shirt.
Yeah.
Y'all know what I'm talking about. Vince also tried to insult Brian while failing to operate a microwave, is my other note here.
Oh, yeah, that's
he couldn't
that was
open
back
it.
at the house party.
Yeah, that was at the house party. I also noted that there was 10 seconds of a cello line here, so there was a score briefly.
It's the only non like EDM / like new metal score. It literally is cello. That's it.
So moving along a little more, Dom and Vince corner Brian after this car building montage because Vince believes he's a cop and Dom doesn't want to quite believe him yet because Brian did save Dom from the cops initially after the first race.
Well, like, it kind of shows how stupid like Vin Diesel's character really is because they catch him like snooping around Hector's garage or Johnny
Trans.
No, they go to that's the thing. They catch him snooping around somebody else's garage. And then he's like, I'm just trying to look at what everybody's using. And then Vin Diesel's like, okay. And then they go to Johnny Tran's garage, and he's like, let's snoop around. That's when they watch the guy like have like oil shot into his mouth. Which is also another thing that doesn't make any sense.
I finally put 2 and 2 together.
Okay.
So you'll notice in Johnny Tran's garage, all 3 of his Honda Civics are missing the entire engine block.
Yeah.
That's because Hector probably took all of them.
Oh.
But we don't know that.
It never comes up.
It never comes up again, and wasn't very clear. And then there's Ted, whoever poor Ted is. And
it's schlubby Ted. I think Ted's just like the guy that works in Johnny Tran's garage. That's it.
Or somehow Jesse because he mentioned, we'll overnight those parts from Japan, and maybe he went to Johnny Tran's garage and stole the Civic parts, I'm guessing.
Wish that, I just don't think
But we don't see that happen.
No.
We don't know.
I mean, we could assume maybe things got, like, cut or edited out at some point.
But also 3 engine blocks just don't go missing.
That's the confusing thing about that scene, because Johnny Tran is, like, yelling at this guy. And he's like, we need engines. We don't have our engines. He's like, they're in the warehouse. And like, we're going to go get them. And then that's all that ever happens.
They're just in the warehouse.
And they force him to drink a bunch of oil.
Or they didn't say why were the engine blocks removed? Why?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. And meanwhile, like Vin Diesel and Paul Walker and the other guy are like hiding. They're just hiding in the garage watching this shit happen.
Right.
It just doesn't, I don't know. It's just, there's just these random pockets of kind of like, why is this happening here?
Yeah, so that part we didn't really understand. So that was Road Rash Gang, a.k.a. Johnny Tran, just to clear that up. So not only do they not have engines in their cars, but their garage is also filled with those Panasonic items that we talked about in the beginning, which implies that Johnny Tran and the Road Rash Gang are doing some smuggling, he's piggybacking off of his dad's business.
But why? I mean, why would he just have a bunch of that stuff sitting in there otherwise? Because later you find out he's not him. And they never even, there's no explanation as to why he had all that stuff in the garage. Anyways.
No, there's not. And we don't know what his parents do because we see that his family is well off.
Yeah.
And I think it's just implied they do stuff with, trading and importing and exporting.
Right.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
Because the only exposition we get in the whole film is when Brian visits Cop Man, Buffalo Bill, and FBI Man.
No, right.
And they don't know what's going on.
No. And that's... I did want to mention how funny it was that when they do arrest, when the cops do show up and they arrest Johnny Tran and like his cronies, at like a big fancy Asian restaurant, and they're like
Right.
eating with chopsticks, and it's like, why are like all the Asian characters always just eating?
Well, they bust into his house.
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
What's
yeah,
his
well,
face's
they
house in front of his family.
Yeah, they bust his buddies at the Asian restaurant, and then they go into his house, and
Into
like his dad
his big
slaps him.
highfalutin LA mansion.
Yeah.
His dad's mansion.
I think all it is he's just supposed to be this spoiled rich Asian kid, and that's it. Who just has a gang and they shoot at people. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's kind
I don't
of
think there's
it's
much more to build.
Not
off of
clear.
that.
No.
Um,
No.
Let's see. I have other notes here about Dom recounting his father's death with the Chevelle.
Yeah. Yeah, so this brings me to a theory that I have about where this franchise is going to go, like, next.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned this to you, like, a year or two ago, and I don't think you understood the context.
Probably not.
Because I didn't know you were in the same boat as I was with these, but I think now that Fast X is out, and that's supposed to be the last one, I think they're going to start over, and they're going to go to Fast 1, and it's going to be Dom as a kid and his dad. And, like, Paul Walker's dad will show up or something. They'll make they'll imply that.
Stupid.
Like, but
don't. No, okay,
but
the
it
part with
would
Dom
be.
being a kid, great.
Yeah,
If
and it's like
Paul
but-
Walker, Brian's dad, no, that
Well,
does
yeah,
not need to be there.
It would be though. It would happen.
No.
Like, I want it to be like it's like I don't know. It would be so dumb. I want it to happen, but yeah, he talks about his dad and how he like. This is where we get to the Chevelle, the
Right.
gray car that always pops up in these movies now, and he's talking about it, and he's like, "Me and my dad built this car, and it had so much torque when it went off the line, it twisted the chassis."
Yeah, that's all he said, and he tried to make it sound as badass.
Yeah,
as
like,
possible,
it's supposed
as
to be
if
like
all
this car
torque
is so-
destroying the vehicles.
Like you and your dad built a thing that didn't work. It broke right when you tried to race it. Like this car, and then it happens again later in the movie. It's like so badass it almost kind of breaks down.
Yeah, and from Dom recounting his father's death, I guess whoever beat his dad, Dom like tried to beat the dude to death, or is
Well, yeah,
that,
because the cops are going. By this time, the cops have said it's definitely Dominic Toretto. He's the guy. After so many times where Paul Walker was like, "It's not him," the cops go, "Yeah, it is. It actually has always been," and they just leave it at that. And they're like, "He's violent. He beat this guy with a wrench," and so he tells them the story about how the guy that caused his dad to crash and die, he like ran into him and just got mad and he beat him up with a torque wrench.
right.
Fitting.
And that's the end of that scene. So now we're
That's
on
it.
the Cuban restaurant date. So Brian and Mia are out on a date.
This
and
is
so
literally the
they're-
part of the movie we're on
Oh
as
yeah,
we're
it
sitting
is in
here.
the background right now. So they're getting all chummy, and they go for a drive. Then after they leave, and Mia's being all cutesy in the driver's seat. Tee hee, see,
Yeah.
I can drive like a
Yeah.
race car driver. Tee,
Yep.
tee, tee.
It made
She
all-
almost wrecks like 6 times. I feel like.
in her little
It's not
blue
impressive.
her little blue car that's
Correct.
also has decals on the side of it.
So they go back to Brian's auto parts store, just the giant NOS store,
Yeah.
NOS Planet,
Yeah,
and they're in
NOS
the back
R Us.
office where I guess Brian just
Oh.
lives. Because Brian and Mia are just naked and just going at it in the back office
Yeah.
of this car parts store, but it looks like a tiny studio apartment,
Yeah,
and it's just right
this-
there
we're
out
looking
in
at
the
it
open.
right now. It's
See,
like
look, I'm
doing
looking-
this sweeping dolly kind of
Sweeping-
shot through.
Right, I'm looking at wheels, I was looking at air intake filters, and there's just naked people.
They're not even. It's not even that.
Well,
It's he
yeah.
gets up and he answers his phone, but it's like it looks like his bedroom is like the back storage area because there's like the double doors.
And he has car pictures all over the
He's-
wall like he's 12.
Like he's always wanted to live. Remember, he's an undercover cop. So like, is it like did the police set that up for him? Is his boss
Yeah,
involved?
he wasn't allowed to live in like the LA mansion with the hundreds and thousands of
Yeah,
boxes.
right.
Of,
No, he's got to live in the
of-
storage, which is, it looks like a nice room. I wonder, like, does
This
he?
looks like a closet.
I
This
mean-
looks like there's a mop bucket on the other side of the room.
I feel like, no, I don't know, obviously, but maybe did they just not have a set? Because he doesn't have an apartment.
That's true.
He doesn't have an apartment set at all. Any other time in this movie, you
right.
don't see where he lives.
You're right.
So that's what it was.
He also had an Arizona. Well, I guess it would have been a fake ID because he's a
right.
cop.
Yeah, and they were like, Vin Diesel
so
goes,
it's implying he's from out of state.
Vin Diesel, we ran your information. You could find anything about anybody on the web.
But they couldn't find that he was a fucking cop in his.
It was literally just.
And they couldn't see that his Arizona ID was fake somehow.
Well, they're realistically, they're not like the smartest criminals either. I mean, the whole thing, and I forgot to mention this too, because the whole reason the cops are so hard about like catching these guys is because they're like, eventually the truckers are gonna fight back. Like, okay,
good. The truckers should fight back. Let them fight back.
Yeah, maybe like, why don't you put like cops on trucks? Like, why? If this is such a big deal, and there's like hundreds of cops involved in this operation, there's nothing else going on in LA.
Well, the other thing is most truckers I know, if not all truckers I know, are armed already.
Armed with guns and drugs.
Tasers,
yeah.
Everything.
I mean, and this is 2001. That would have been just as normal then as it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, so
the trucker we saw with, I thought it was a sawed-off shotgun, but it just kind of looked like one of those Mossbergs.
It's
really
like
tiny.
It's like a SWAT, full. It's like an over-under, fucking. Was it a double barrel? But it's one of those like clicks open. I forget what the term is for that.
Yeah.
But it's like a weird. It's something you probably can't get anymore.
It was a big ass shotgun.
Yeah.
That you can wield with one hand that would blow off my tiny little hand.
It would hyperextend my elbow.
Exactly.
Really bad.
Which was that trucker was badass.
Yeah, I mean, that guy did not give a fuck. Didn't give a fuck about his own truck because he's shooting through the windows at like these people.
So
this is
we'll get to that scene. So after.
Where are we now?
So we stopped at Cuban restaurant date. Montage of cops getting ready. SWAT team. Cops bust road rash gang. Yeah. Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez are getting hot and bothered in the
middle of the montage.
In the middle of the montage, so we have a sex montage.
I think we just have to get to Race Wars.
Race
Wars is the biggest thing.
Because there's a lot of nonsense and exposition between Buffalo Bill and Brian, and then Dom and Brian. So Race Wars is the most important part with babes.
They make you think it is, right? But like parts of so much of the movie is like, this is all for Race Wars. This is about Race Wars.
We saw the kid with the light up yo-yos, though. That was important.
That's the best. Just out of nowhere, it's just this one extra with like a light up yo-yo, and he's doing like this fancy like yo-yo trick.
Yeah, he was doing some insane yo-yo tricks.
Yeah, and he just doesn't give a shit. Like, what if he was not even one of the extras? He just wandered.
He just showed up. He's like, watch me.
Let me
walk the dog. Like, whatever.
I gotta show this.
Remember.
Vin Diesel was nobody in this before like. When he was in this movie, though, he was only in like Saving Private Ryan before this.
Oh, yeah.
If he was in anything else, it was small and nobody knew about it. But yeah, he was nobody. He wasn't shit, until this movie. No, he was in Pitch Black. He was in Pitch Black, which didn't do super hot, if I remember correctly. That was probably like a few years.
So
before
getting
this.
back to Race Wars,
go ahead.
First race is between, I think, either Johnny Tran or Lance, one of the people in Road Rash Gang, and Skyline Child. So Skyline Child.
Johnny Tran, yeah.
So Skyline Child loses. He loses his car, but he doesn't want to give up his car, so he just drives off the racetrack. And Johnny Tran gets pissed at Dom and tries to beat him up, like, "I'll go get my car."
It's kind of a weird thing because it just pops up out of nowhere. He's like, like Skyline Child's like, "I'm gonna race Johnny Tran for slips," and they're like, "No, don't do that. His car is faster."
His car was faster.
And everybody forgets. This is another thing I've been waiting to bring up. Is Nos in this movie is like, it's like the special move that everybody has but nobody expects.
Right.
Every time, like somebody hits Nos and then flies by, and the other guy goes, "What? No!" Like, as if this hidden secret, but like,
it's not.
You have people that have it and they hit it too early, and then everybody's like, "Too early," and But yeah, so that race happens and he loses.
So, and then Skyline Child runs off, and we don't get resolution for about a half hour on that.
We don't get a resolution at all.
Brian tells Mia he's a cop, and he needs to stop the cops, basically.
I'm a cop. Your brother is
He's
in
like, "I
danger of cops.
So I'm going to try and stop the cops because the truckers are going to take things into their own hands, and that's all. That is how those lines went.
Well, and again, Race Wars is so just thrown away at this point because
Yeah,
he just randomly sees like Vin Diesel talking to like his buddies, and Mia's trying to stop him, and they take off. Like,
yeah. So Race Wars, we see Skyline Child lose, and that's it. So
that's literally it. That's all that happens in Race Wars.
Yeah.
Other than like Michelle Rodriguez races some guy just as like a sort of like girl power moment, you know, which this movie was lacking up until.
It's not so much girl power as it was sexism moment.
Whatever you want to call it. Because he's like, it's this random guy that's everybody has.
In 2001, it was not a sexism moment. In 2023, it was a sexism
It's a pretty sexist moment. I mean, everybody's got wads of cash in their shirt, you know, ready to pull out. Mm-hmm. This is what bothers me about this movie here is you have Race Wars, which could have been a climax in some way. You have the last truck job, which gets foiled by crazy trucker with a shotgun.
Which is pretty badass. I think that was the most exciting scene.
Man, here's the most exciting scene in this entire movie for me was the very first like drag race. Like, and then that's it. They don't do it like that anymore.
Well, yes and no on that. What I didn't like was it focused primarily on drivers' reactions to other drivers pressing buttons and just close-ups of their hands pressing buttons. And to me, they would show that, blur some lights past and watch a car go past blurry, put some really loud noises behind it and to create an action scene. Like
shots of like them like shifting up.
If there were more car stunts and less drivers looking into like, you know, the distance going or ooh or what? Like, I would have found it more action packed. At least with the trucker scene, we saw a lot of crazy.
There was a lot of like hanging on the side of semi stunts and like it makes me wonder if that Vince guy, if like he's an actual actor or just like a stunt man, because I think he was like actually hanging off of that.
Yeah, I think he looked very much like he was doing his own.
And
stunts.
He was a bad actor, which would tell me he was a stunt man.
Well, they also did the Honda Civic goes under the tractor trailer again, which they only did that twice during the whole film. So in the beginning and right now.
Well, they do it earlier, and like the car like stays under it, so it can go through like this barrier.
Right.
But yeah, this one she like flies under it, and that was like that was something you saw in the trailer every time, every trailer. And when you look at it too, you can tell that they raised they raised that trailer so high up,
right,
to get that car under. But it was still cool. It looks really good. It's really shot cool. Like.
Well, it's shot from...
You have to watch it in slow motion
at
to
like a
see
45-degree angle, so you can't tell that the trailer's raised.
I mean...
It just looks very
I'm
still
going to dog on this movie for being a driving movie. Most of the chase scenes are just... I don't know. I think that the semi-truck is kind of boring. It's like the guy hanging off of it is... There's not as much fun driving stuff. They're on this empty desert. There's no traffic. You know, and they go after him in the middle of the day for some reason.
Why not?
Well,
that's when we shot it.
I guess that's well, because I guess they get like some kind of a tip about this one truck, and that's why they leave in the middle of Race Wars or something.
Everyone is so shiny in this film. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're just watching in the background. Everyone is just so shiny and sweaty all the time. It's I love that it goes from like illegal street racing to like Race Wars, which is supposed to be like this legal event, like regulated thing, and it's like a bunch of fat like white guys walking around in like sunglasses. So moving on. So we have the scene with the trucker fight, and then Dom and Brian finally make it back to Dom's home base after Vince was airlifted out of the middle of a field, which is when Dom realizes that Brian was a cop because Brian
he calls in his badge number.
Yeah, he calls in his badge number and he summons a medical helicopter,
which you can just do
because you can just do that.
And like they don't even ask him any questions. They're like, "Oh, is this the guy?" Okay, and they just fly off.
Mia already knew because Brian told her at Race Wars, and then Dom just kind of stares confused. Like I was waiting for him to like throw a punch or something.
Yeah, he starts to like freak out,
but he didn't freak out. So then they make it back to home base, and Skyline Child comes back, and then Johnny Tran and Lance, so two head honchos of the Road Rash gang, drive by and shoot Skyline Child because he fled the race.
Yeah, and it's like perfectly timed because he's like, "I'm sorry, I didn't know about," and then they drive by and then shoot him, and that is literally the last you ever see of him because this is only the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Well, we don't know because it's implied that he doesn't make it, but you see Mia there like standing by him, and he's just kind of.
Well, they don't even. They don't
really show his body.
No, here's my problem. Right, is there is like all this footage of them shooting up his car and the front yard and the house. And, like, for, like, a second, you see him fall over, but you don't even see any, like, squibs. Right. Like, there might be, like, a very mild squib, you know, that where, like, his shirt pops.
Right,
and it kind of looks like he gets shot, but then, like you said...
It looks like he got shot in the stomach, though.
Yeah, it looks like he's shot in the abdomen or the torso somewhere. Like, something that might be lethal, right? But it's not... You know, like when I see a movie, like a character like this is meant to die, you're standing there and it's like
yeah, they did not ventilate Skyline Child. We saw I recall one bullet hitting him, and the scene's coming up here in like
it is. This is
minutes,
this is the first beyond Paul Walker being a cop. This is the other thing that like really bothered me when I was a kid was you never find out if he lives or dies. I mean. It's just not brought up. Now, I don't know if the character comes back later, so I guess we'll have to see, but...
Why the fuck does he have snowflakes all over his... Did you ever, like...
I just noticed
that. Sorry,
all
continue.
Of everybody's like car in this movie is covered in decals, and they all look the same.
That looks like Dollar Tree snowflake, it's Christmas. The Christmas Honda right here.
I mean, I think the purpose really is probably just so you can differentiate them, like the characters' cars from other cars. But so this
we got to move on. To
this is the last chase. This is what I was talking about earlier. This movie has it can't decide what it wants its climax to be because we've just had this long race on the chase on the highway with the semi trucks. Now we have this shooting. The Skyline Child gets killed apparently, and then they chase after the guys on the motorcycles, and Johnny Tran gets killed. Paul Walker kills Paul Walker, a policeman,
kills this man,
kills this random
really arrest him,
man who has no relation to the case he's working on. Just kills him. And they go through this chase, and then at some point, Paul Walker and Vin Diesel are just at this. They're just at the stop sign after this harrowing chase, and he's just like, "We're gonna drag race." He basically was like, "I used to drag race here when I was in high school."
And he's in the Chevelle, mind you.
Yeah.
Well, the Chevelle comes up again.
Yeah, the worst
the
handling car you could use in this whole movie.
I don't think this one, the one at the end, was an SS.
Yeah.
Was this one?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know what this... I'm not even 100% sure his car... I'm not even 100% sure it was a Chevelle, but I trust your opinion.
I thought it was a Chevelle.
Yeah, I think it is. Because I remember my dad really liking it. My dad likes Chevelles.
So anyway, he's in this souped-up Chevelle that probably weighs 16 tons more than the Toyota Supra.
Yeah,
that
28,000 pounds this car is, just on the front end.
Because I think Brian was in a Supra.
Is it a Supra?
The orange car? Yeah, it was a Supra.
Because it's a 2JZ. And then I just know that's the Supra engine, and they made a big deal out about that. Random people making out in the corner again.
That's just part of this film. It's just people making out everywhere.
Race War is supposed to be a family event. Get out of here, kids! But so we're at the stop sign, and they have the last race. So there's like the drag race. There's like the big fun drag race in the beginning of the movie, and then this drag race, and that's really like the two special drag races, which I thought there was going to be a lot more of in this movie when I was a kid, and I was always really disappointed. Too much of this talking bullshit.
And the Mad Max filter is back on.
I'm happy with
for
it.
the drag
I'm
race. So the
it's
desert
fine.
filter back
Yeah.
on. Everything's very yellow and orange again.
Yeah,
So
it's great, and the racing, and it's the longest goddamn drag race in the world in human history.
let's talk about the speeding train
The fucking fastest train
you've ever seen in your life.
The longest drag race meets the fastest train in California.
So Dom and Brian in their two cars are quickly approaching a railroad crossing in which the train is coming, and you see like the bars come down and like the railroad lights are flashing, but this train, so they're still driving on the streets of LA. So this is a very heavy metropolitan, probably residential area.
Oh yeah,
and
people
this train
are terrified.
is barreling like 80 miles an hour. Can you imagine? In Davenport in the West End where we lived, if like where that train was, just
like it would be
70
taking
miles an
trees with it.
It would
like
be.
they'd flying, like trees would be horizontal, and that's when so they come to this train crossing, and they barely miss the train, and they kind of
so
jump.
they drive through like the bar things,
the barrier,
and
you
they
can
barely
see,
miss it.
And when you look at it, like just how goofy the slow motion is, right? And how slow the cars are moving, but the train is still going at light speed. You know,
it wasn't
like
even true slow motion. It was
Right.
what I call like dissociation.
it's
slow
like an
motion
effect.
where-
It looks like it's some kind of an effect on it.
Where it's that time lapse blur, like so somebody like turns their head to look behind them.
Yeah.
And there's just a trail of like.
Well, it's like the train
they're
has
doing.
that on it, but
Yeah,
like
so
the
that-
cars, it's so weird. It's just like you said. It's like if it were real speed, that train would be a blur. Like you would,
Yeah.
it was moving so fast. But then, like after Dom crashes because they miss the train and Dom wipes out, and like in the background you see that
You
see
the
a train
same
again.
train. You
Like,
see
and
the
it's going normal speed.
no. That was the crowning moment of this film, to see the train in the background while after Dom
Yeah.
crashes his Chevelle. And I remember your comment was, "Oh, here comes the train. The train's just saying, oh, I wanted to see if you guys were doing okay."
And it circled
You
back.
guys will
It
get
came
circled
back
back.
around. Just checking on you guys. You okay?
It was the same train
Those
because it had the same train
insane
engine at the
train
front.
engineer's eyes are bleeding because he's been going 800 miles an hour for hours.
Didn't pay me enough to do this.
You're not the first people I've killed.
So
But then that's it.
those are my last notes. Yep,
That's
it just
that's
ends.
it. My notes ended way before yours did too. So like because you hear cops coming because they just know where they are. Cops just
and Brian lets Dom
he
get
just
away.
lets him go. He's like, I owe you a car, and he gives him that car, and he drives away. And then the movie ends with Paul Walker walking towards the police sirens. And I remember watching this with my dad because we watched it together for the first time. And that scene happens, and my dad goes, "What?" And he gets up and he walks. He's like, "That's stupid." He just lets him go. Like, and
Yeah,
I mean,
it
good
does.
because we wouldn't have had other movies, I guess.
Well, and it's implied that Brian learned what family is
Yeah,
in a way,
and that
without them explicitly saying that we are family, like they did in the later films.
yeah, you know, it
where
happens.
it gets memed to death.
It for sure becomes like a theme later on. They
Yep.
kind of just barely touched on it. In this,
So credits roll, and then there is a post-credits scene,
which I did not know.
which I didn't know
about.
either. We see Dom just driving in Baja, California, and he has a different Chevelle this time. It's an orange one with
Which-
black racing stripes, or is
And it's
it?
white. They're white.
Oh, I thought it was orange.
And that's red and white.
Is it?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe it was that.
It's
The
because
Mad
when you
Max
said
filter,
SS,
yeah.
it's how every other Chevelle SS looks. It's red
Yeah.
with white stripes. It's not my look, but
I could have sworn it was orange, but anyway.
maybe it's red orange.
I don't know.
He's in California.
They went extra hard with the Mad
in-
Max filter to imply that he was driving into Mexico.
He's going. Yeah, they're
So-
like a dirt road.
Yeah,
Like
he was just driving.
Is he
south
taking like
across
the road
border.
that like immigrants walk or something?
I don't
Like,
know.
is he driving through the wall?
We don't know, and he just does one of those very cinematic smile
I feel-
and nod or smirk.
It seems
and
like
nod
something
and
they might have
grins.
tacked on at the end because
Right.
it is so like. Where are the other characters? Is it just him?
Well,
You
they
know?
tack that on so they can make a second film that Dom got away and he's
I'm
alive
still-
and he'll be back. And
I still swear to God, Tokyo Drift came out after this. Like, I know
I
what
just
you
showed
showed
you
me,
the
the wiki. I know. I'm having a hard time accepting that. But
I'm sure there are other Fast and the Furious experts out there that maybe can shed some light.
I don't know. I must be remembering it wrong, but I had a conversation with somebody else just recently about the same thing, and I don't know. Either way, so I guess.
So what are our final thoughts?
Yeah,
on
I was going to
this?
say, that's what I was going to ask you, because now, at this point, I will say first, this was the one I was the least excited about. Because, one, I had seen it, and two, I knew it had a boring ending. Nothing is established, really. I don't think they planned on making a bunch of these. So this one is probably the most boring. Tokyo Drift is probably the worst one. This is probably the most boring overall.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there wasn't a ton to develop with the characters because it's going to focus on racing and the story, but the story was still shite.
yeah,
My
it
issue
was.
is there was no character development. The story was verily verily piecemealed together.
Yeah, I mean, Dom, who is. There's no real villain in this movie, other than kind of Johnny Tran, but he's more so just kind of like a nuisance. I guess you could consider this truck driver a villain because
Well,
he's
and even
kind of
I
evil.
wouldn't. Dom is antagonizing the truck driver. Why is Dom got to be smuggling stuff?
Oh
and-
my God,
and
this is
borrow-
terrible. We're in this situation that we totally got ourselves into.
Well, yeah, and he's bothering this poor truck driver
He's just
that's
trying to make a living.
do his job.
See, now they should have made it where the guy's shooting up or he's smoking meth before he drives away from his hotel. And he's like, I'm just waiting for some motherfuckers to come fuck with me. So he's crazy, and they just happen to come across the wrong trucker. But they don't even do that. It's this faceless guy with a blue trucker
Yeah, we
hat
don't
on.
even see what he looks like.
He gets away. He goes home to his
gun.
family to tell this story too.
We see his gun in his arm.
Yeah, he
and his trucker
clumsily
hat.
reloads
That's
his
it.
shotgun a
Correct.
bunch.
And we see Vince and his Hot Topic mesh tank top.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, for the time, this movie wasn't terrible. I would say it doesn't hold up, especially the fact that they're stealing DVD players and I mean, I guess things about that things about the story there don't hold up. But
Yeah, I was actually looking forward to all the things that make this a period piece, as you called it. I was kind
Yeah.
of looking forward to the old technology.
Yep.
Just little things that you can poke fun at, like the fashion. And even then, I didn't find a lot of it funny or endearing. I just thought it did not age well at all.
I mean, it's the interesting thing is it's in a very in between time. The internet exists and it's getting popular, but there's still no smartphones. You don't have anybody
Also, the awkward thing with this is casting was done in 1998, and they started filming in 1999, but this wasn't released till 2001.
Yeah.
Which there was quite a lurch in technological
You're right.
advances in those 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. Huh.
Which it was already dated probably by the time it came out in
Oh,
2001.
yeah. But I mean, despite that, this movie it was so popular and it it really boosted street racing culture and car culture all over the world. It made more of what it was portraying in terms of just
Right.
street racing, which is interesting. kind of like Top Gun. Like Top Gun made a bunch of people like, want to be like fighter pilots, and it upped like the number of people like trying to be fighter pilots, like shot up through the roof.
That and you have other like game franchises that came out around this time. Like the original Xbox would have been out, so Midnight Club,
Dub Edition,
yep,
the Midnight Club 3,
and Need for Speed, the
Underground
Black one, Black Edition.
Oh,
is it Need for Speed Most Wanted Black Edition? Right?
Yes,
is it that one?
Yeah. I can't keep track of the Need for Speeds. Underground was the last one that I played.
The Most Wanted is the most popular one, and Underground 1 and 2.
It also, it is honestly shit you see in this movie, you still see in like street racing games.
Absolutely.
There's always that Hector character is like, man, you just need to go talk to the right person, essay. Like he's like some Mexican guy that like takes you and he's like, go see Hank over there in the garage, eh? And he's like, he's like Mexican Canadian. I made him sound like, but
yeah. So a lot of those tropes do carry over into video games, and it makes me wonder if it's a direct reference to this film. In a sense, without
maybe I would
not direct and
probably
indirect
more indirect.
reference.
Yeah,
it's
like it's just there. A lot of the stuff that happened. There we go, cell phone.
With an antenna.
A lot of the stuff did stick, and Vin Diesel. It made Vin Diesel blow up, and Paul Walker was kind of blown up already.
Right.
I don't know, but does it make you excited for the rest of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it can only go up from
It
here.
literally can. It literally can. I have been told by people that are like legitimate fans of the franchise that, like, at least a handful of the movies after this are like actually good. I take that with much grains of much salt.
So do you agree with the Metacritic score of what was it? 58 out of 100 or 54 out of 100?
I don't even know what to think about a Metacritic score from like
that's
2001.
That's basically a fail. It's like 54%.
Yeah. Well, but still, it was still huge. It was still popular. And hell, they've made 10 of them by now. Would I agree? No. I think in 2001,
I think it's a solid C-.
I don't know what grade I would give it. If you're asking me for a grade, I would give it I think a C-. I think a C- is a little unkind for 2001.
But is it unkind for the lack of story and depth here?
What are you looking for here?
Well, the action didn't make up for it.
That's true. No, that's what I'm considering. Like if I'm going to give this movie a grade, that's what I'm looking at is what should be the biggest part of the movie. Yeah, I just give it a little bit better of a grade than C-. Like I know I said like the racing parts suck, but overall, like asking for this movie to have a deep story and character development is asking a lot. Maybe it happens more so later on in the other movies.
It is asking a lot, and however, the action should have made up for that. Like, we only saw one explosion.
Yeah, there was only one explosion.
We only saw the Honda Civics go under the trucks twice.
There's only one car flip. Nope, sorry, 2 car flips.
We didn't see the majority of race wars. We saw Michelle Rodriguez race, and then we saw Skyline Child.
You know what I wonder about race wars? Do you think they were shooting the rodeo?
I think they might have been shooting the rodeo.
They
might have been
because I believe race wars is a real thing, or at least was a real event.
So we should specify what shooting the rodeo means.
Yeah.
So shooting the rodeo means just put in filler footage.
Right. It's like the rodeo was in town. You needed extra stuff in your movie, so you went to the rodeo and you shot a bunch of random footage.
So Race Wars was in the desert. So
it's
a race movie. Let's go film Race Wars.
Like it would be the bigger studio version of shooting the rodeo, like the. Race War, because I do think Race Wars is a real event. I might be wrong, and I didn't look it up because who cares? But they don't really do a ton. That it kind of feels like 10 minutes of the movie, even though like we're leading up to. They keep bringing it up,
right?
But I don't know. I mean, but I would give it a C plus. I know that's not much different. Like having seen this tonight for the first time in 20 years plus, I'll never watch it again.
I won't either.
Like
I don't need to.
I don't need to. It's boring, mainly, like as a whole, compared to what I know the rest of the movies are. There's not a whole lot. Even like Vin Diesel's kind of like whatever. I mean, he's basically as Vin Diesel gets. I don't know. There's not a whole lot that would bring me back to this one. It's not even it's the first one, because it seems like a prequel. You know.
Would you call it Earnest? That's where we loop back to the title of this podcast.
Earnest.
The importance of being slow.
That's right.
And earnest. So closing thoughts.
I don't know. I don't think so. But I don't. It's not that. Okay, you know what? Yes, I do, because I don't feel like this movie was really cashing in on something. Because as far as I know, the whole street racing culture, this stuff was only going on the West Coast and in like select spots. I'm probably wrong about that, but it doesn't feel like they were necessarily cashing in. That also doesn't mean that it's like a pure like, oh, we wanted to make a movie about cars and racing. Like, I mean, every movie's a cash grab, but like,
I mean, I was 11 in 2001.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
If I had seen this when I was 11, I probably would have liked it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known anything about street racing or street racing culture. It would have intrigued me.
You know, it's not necessarily something that's wholly unique beyond them including the street racing culture thing into it, because it is very Miami Vice, like very Magnum PI. It's like cool cars and motorcycle chases on fucking in the Hollywood Hills. You know, it's all stuff you've seen before, but then you just add in like this sort of DIY blue collar car culture thing to it. And I was just so disappointed when I was a kid that there were cops. I was disappointed Paul Walker was a cop. I was disappointed that cops had anything to do with it, because I just wanted it to be like street racing and like car racing stuff, but they always got to add cops in for some reason. And I don't know. I am more excited for the rest of the movies for sure than I was for this. I'm happy we're past this one.
Right. And I agree there too. So I think I've said my final piece. My solid C-, like 73.
Yeah.
Out of 100. Give it
I
some.
It's
Earnest.
I don't disagree with
Earnest.
it as much as I did 5 minutes ago. Oh, there's Johnny Tran's dead.
Yep.
You're a murderer, Paul Walker.
Yep, it's almost the end of the film again. Here.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, yeah, we
Hour
almost took.
yeah.
That works. Whatever, hour 30. That works. But yeah, so that's the first one.
Yeah, thank you for joining us on the first episode of Non-Essential Fountains. The importance of being slow and earnest. Our review of the
part 1.
Our review of the Fast and the Furious film from 2001.
I don't know if we're gonna do different episode titles or not yet. There's so many. At the time we're recording this, I have figured out so little about what.
Yeah, we
like
might just do all
this.
the Fast and the Furious just all in one go. We don't know yet.
I think we're gonna go all the way to 10 and then find a new bonkers franchise, like, you know, at least something worth watching, and we'll just do shit in between then. I don't know. We have so many conversations about movies, and it would be having neither of us have seen the rest of these beyond Tokyo Drift, which I don't even
which is the third one, by the way.
Okay, we'll figure that out. We'll make sure that that's correct. But yeah, this is Lyndon and Emily. And Emily, the Non-Essential Fountains.
Signing out for the night.
Done, and we'll be back again.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.